When the US puts sanctions on a strategic partner like India, you have to wonder if the official reason is the whole story. So, what's really going on here? Is this just about enforcing international policy, or is there a growing fear of India's independence at play? Today, we're going to dig into the real motivations behind these critical actions. So, yeah, that's the big question, right? Why is this all happening now? It really boils down to two very different competing stories. On one hand, you have the official line, this is simply about US policy. But on the other hand, there's a pretty strong argument that this is actually being driven by a deep-seated fear of India's rise. Let's start with the official explanation. All right, so let's take America's official reasoning at face value for a moment. The US government has been pretty vocal about its justifications for these actions. So what exactly are they saying? And look, these aren't just little wrist slaps. We're talking about some pretty significant moves. There are heavy tariffs, anywhere from 25 to 50% on certain Indian goods. 6 Indian companies have been outright banned. And maybe the biggest move of all, the US canceled the sanction exemption for India's work on Iran's Chabahar port, which is a project that is absolutely vital for India's trade into Central Asia. Okay, so if you're looking at this from Washington's point of view, the logic is pretty straightforward. The main goal is to isolate Russia and Iran. US officials are essentially saying these Indian companies are part of an illegal shipping and trading network that's helping sanctioned countries get around the rules. Simple as that. But then you look at India's side of the story, and it's completely different. Officials there are making it clear that these companies are not breaking any Indian laws. And even more importantly, they're arguing that getting affordable energy is a massive national priority. For an economy the size of India's, access to oil, whether it's from Russia or Iran, isn't just a preference, it's an absolute necessity. So, that's the official story. But you know how it is with geopolitics. There's always what's being said out loud, and then there's what's really going on under the surface. So let's explore a different idea. What if this isn't about policy enforcement at all? What if, at its core, America is actually afraid? Now, according to this view, these sanctions are rooted in 3 fundamental fears in the US. A fear of a truly multipolar world, a fear of losing control over the global energy markets, and a growing fear of competition from India's talent. Let's break that down. First, this fear of a multipolar world. For decades, the US has pretty much set the tone for its partners in foreign policy, but India has always insisted on walking its own path, maintaining strong relationships with countries like Russia and Iran. That strategic independence directly challenges American global influence. And from this perspective, sanctions are a tool to try and pull India back in line. Second, you've got the energy markets. Think about it. When India secures affordable oil directly from Russia or Iran, it weakens the leverage that the US and its Western allies have over global prices and supply. And for them, losing that kind of control is a pretty significant strategic concern. And the third fear? Just pure economic competition. When you see things like the H-1B visa fees getting hiked, some analysts don't see a simple policy adjustment. They see a defensive move squarely aimed at slowing down the momentum of India's massive and highly skilled workforce. So we have the official policy on one side and these deep-seated fears on the other. But this isn't just some theoretical debate, right? These decisions have very real-world consequences for India's economy and its future on the global stage. And the stakes here are incredibly high. These sanctions pose a direct threat to the engines of the Indian economy. We're talking about everything from exports and industry to the banking and shipping sectors. And of course, when all of that gets squeezed, it puts Indian jobs at risk. And the fallout isn't just economic. Strategically, these sanctions could push India in totally new directions. They could strain the critical defense and tech partnerships with the US, and at the same time, they could actually drive India into even stronger alliances with Russia, Central Asia, and the Gulf nations. The real irony here is that US pressure might be the very thing that accelerates India's Atmanirbhar Bharat, that big push for self-reliance. So, after looking at both arguments, where do we land? Is this all about enforcing a policy, or is it really being driven by fear? Well, as is usually the case, the real answer isn't that simple. Because the reality is it's not really an either-or situation. The most convincing explanation is that these two things, the stated policy and the unspoken fear, are actually working together. So here's the crucial point. While the sanctions are, in fact, part of America's stated foreign policy, that very policy is almost certainly being shaped and influenced by a deeper strategic fear of a rising India that's acting with complete independence on the world stage. The two are totally intertwined. This leaves India walking a geopolitical tightrope, trying to secure its own interests without alienating a critical partner. The decisions made today are going to define its path for decades. So the final question isn't just for the politicians, it's for all of us to think about. How should India navigate this?